In a silent classroom, hatred boiled louder than words. A racist bully's hands tightened around a teacher's throat, but what he didn't know was that she carried a past that could end him before he even blinked. Miss Jordan stepped into the science lab, her calm voice filling the room like a soft wave, carrying with it authority and warmth. She wasn't just another teacher walking into a new class, she was a black woman who had climbed mountains of struggle, fought battles of doubt, and earned her place through resilience and sheer determination. Every step she took carried the weight of her past and the pride of her identity. She was there not only to teach formulas and experiments, but to prove that dignity and strength belong in every corner of society. The students' eyes followed her as she wrote her name on the board, some curious, some respectful, but not all were kind. In the very back of the room, arms crossed and a smirk tugging at his lips, sat Ryan, the school's infamous troublemaker. He wasn't just a prankster, he was a bully who thrived on making others feel small. His words were sharp, his actions cruel, and his confidence came from years of no one daring to stand against him. From the very first day, his mocking whispers slithered through the classroom like poison. "Look at her, who does she think she is?" he muttered just loud enough for others to hear. A few students chuckled nervously, afraid to confront him, but uncomfortable with his disrespect. Miss Jordan heard it, of course she did, but she chose not to react. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was control, the kind of patience only those with true strength possess. What Ryan didn't know was that this calm woman standing before him wasn't just a teacher, she was someone who had faced battles far harsher than his childish cruelty, and soon, he was about to find out exactly who he was dealing with. Ryan's jokes weren't harmless, they were sharp like knives that cut deeper than anyone wanted to admit. Every time Miss Jordan walked into the classroom, his eyes followed her like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He mocked her skin with cruel comparisons, twisted her accent into something to laugh at, and sneered at the way she dressed as though dignity was a costume he could tear apart. The class laughed, but not because they found it funny. Their laughter was nervous, shaky, the kind that came from fear, not joy. Everyone knew Ryan was dangerous, not because he was strong, but because he controlled the room with intimidation. To stand against him meant becoming his next target, and no one wanted to be humiliated or hurt. Miss Jordan heard it all, every word, every cruel giggle that followed his insults, but she stood tall, her eyes calm, her voice steady, as though she were made of steel. Inside, though, she knew the storm was building. Each remark was another strike of thunder, and sooner or later, the lightning would crash. That moment came one afternoon, when the students were working on a lab experiment. The smell of chemicals filled the air, test tubes clinked against glass, and chatter hummed softly across the room. It was the perfect cover for Ryan to make his move. He leaned in close, blocking her path, his smirk curling into something darker. "You don't belong here," he whispered, the words dripping with venom. Then louder, so the class could hear, he hurled insults that burned like fire, words meant to strip away her dignity. The students froze, eyes wide, waiting to see what would happen next. They didn't know it yet, but Ryan had just pushed too far, and the storm inside Miss Jordan was about to break. Before anyone could react, Ryan's hand shot out and clamped around Miss Jordan's throat. The entire lab seemed to stop breathing, the soft clinking of glassware fell silent, and the hum of chatter was cut off like a switch had been flipped. The room froze, the laughter that had once encouraged him instantly died, and a chilling silence filled the air. Some students gasped so loudly it echoed against the lab walls, others stood in shock, their faces pale, unsure if they should scream, run, or intervene. A few, hands trembling, had their phones halfway raised, torn between filming the chaos or helping the woman being attacked before their eyes. Ryan's grip tightened, his knuckles white with force, his eyes blazing with arrogance. He leaned in close, his breath heavy with hatred as he sneered, "You don't belong here." The words hung in the air, poisonous and cruel, but beneath them lay the truth. Ryan thought he had control. What he didn't know was that the woman in his grasp wasn't just a teacher in a classroom. Miss Jordan had a past that carried discipline sharper than any insult, a past forged in battlefields far from the safety of a school. She had served years in the military, not as a bystander, but as a warrior. She was trained to fight, trained to defend, trained to survive in situations far more dangerous than a teenager's grip. Her eyes, calm but unyielding, locked onto his with a power that shook him to his core. Even in that moment, with his hand around her throat, it wasn't fear. She showed, it was strength. The class had no idea, but they were seconds away from seeing a side of Miss Jordan no one had ever witnessed before. With calm precision, Miss Jordan's training took over like a reflex. Her movements were not panicked, not rushed, but sharp and deliberate, the kind only years of discipline could create. She shifted her weight, twisted her body with surprising force, and in a split second, Ryan's grip slipped from her throat. The class gasped as she seized control, her hands moving faster than their eyes could follow. Before Ryan even realized what had happened, he was slammed face first onto the cold lab table, his arm twisted securely behind his back, the glassware rattled around him, test tubes nearly toppling as the once feared bully was held down with the ease of a soldier restraining an enemy. His arrogance drained from him in an instant, replaced by wide-eyed fear. The smirk that once seemed permanent was gone, his mouth open but voiceless. The students who once laughed at his cruel jokes now stared in stunned silence, their phones forgotten, their jaws dropped. Miss Jordan leaned close, her voice calm but laced with authority that cut deeper than any shout. "Respect is not given, it's earned," she declared, each word striking the air like a hammer. Her tone wasn't angry, it was steady, commanding, the kind of voice that made soldiers listen, the kind of voice that left no room for defiance. Pinned beneath her strength, Ryan squirmed, but it was useless. The boy who once ruled the classroom with fear was now powerless, exposed in front of the very students he had controlled. For the first time, they saw him not as a leader, not as a threat, but as a frightened kid completely undone by the teacher he thought was weak. Security rushed in, their footsteps pounding against the tiled floor as voices shouted over the tension. But by the time they reached the lab, the message had already been delivered, loud and clear. Ryan, the feared bully of the school, was pinned down and powerless, his pride shattered in front of the very students who once followed his lead. The officers pulled him away, but his eyes didn't rise to meet anyone's. The confidence, the smirk, the cruel laughter, all of it had been stripped away, leaving behind only shame. Suspension came swiftly, and with it, the end of his reign in the classroom. No longer was he the boy who controlled the room, he was the boy who had been defeated by the one person he thought he could break. The students looked at Miss Jordan with new eyes. They didn't just see a teacher anymore, they saw a warrior, a woman who carried strength and discipline inside her like armor. Her courage had transformed the lab that once echoed with fear into a place of respect. It was no longer Ryan's stage, it was her classroom, a space where dignity, not cruelty, held the final word. Whispers spread across the school, not of shame, but of admiration. Students spoke of her calm bravery, of the way she stood unshaken even when threatened. Some even found inspiration in her story, realizing that true power didn't come from intimidation, but from resilience, patience, and inner strength. From that day on, no one dared mock her again. Even Ryan, broken and humbled, carried the memory of that day for the rest of his school life, the day his hate collided with her strength, and lost. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that will leave you speechless. Your support means everything.